Welcome to the Elliott Feldman podcast. I'm your host, Elliott Feldman. I'm joined today by Shawn Cunix. Shawn Cunix is the owner of Toy Barn in Dublin, which is the top supplier of exotic cars in Columbus. If you've ever seen a Ferrari or Lambo rolling around in the city, it likely came from Toy Barn. But life wasn't always easy for Shawn. His family grew up broke, constantly in and out of homes, and his parents divorced when he was only 3 years old. But these were the ashes where the phoenix would rise, because Shawn Cunix had an entrepreneurial drive and a vision where he knew he was going to be something big. He started selling candy in the 6th grade, and in high school, Shawn worked 3 jobs to help provide for his family financially. By the age of 16, he saved up enough money to buy his first car, which was a 1986 Trans Am. Later, after attending OSU, he got a job at Ross Labs in sales and absolutely killed it. He then moved on to work at AirTouch Cellular before it became Verizon Wireless to become their top sales rep in the whole country, making $170,000 a year selling cell phones in the late 90s. But Shawn had bigger goals, and in April of 2001, he went out on his own, starting to sell cell phones out of his basement. 6 months later, he opened up his first Verizon Wireless store in Gahanna. Over the next several years, Shawn opened up more than 80 wireless stores, making $90 million in revenue. Years later, in 2006, Shawn developed a new passion playing professional poker and has won over $2.2 million playing poker all across the United States. It was in 2016 when Shawn bought the Toy Barn car dealership with the goal of building a car dealership that people can trust. And when he's not at Toy Barn, Shawn also sits on the board of Team Focus, which is a program that helps mentor young boys who don't have a father figure. And having accomplished so much in his life, overcoming all the odds, Shawn Cunix is definitely a business influencer in Columbus. And we're very excited to have such an influencer on our 18th episode of our podcast. Shawn Cunix, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. After that introduction, I'm not sure that I know what I can add to it.
I know, it's like where to begin, right?
Yes.
So were you always were you born in Columbus?
Yes, born and raised.
Which part?
East Side.
East Side?
Yes. I went to East Haven Elementary, Southmore Middle, and Independence High School.
Got you. So growing up, obviously like rough childhood, in and out of homes, and I read somewhere you ended up in your grandma's basement for a time. Like,
we were in and out of. Grandma always let us come in when we weren't able to keep a home, and then at some point, teenage years, I moved permanently into my grandmother's house. And actually, and I don't mind saying it, and may she rest in peace, an amazing lady, and she was remarried, and my grandpa was so old school, or whatever you want to call it, he slept on the couch downstairs and paid the bills. So I had 2 grandpas in the same house.
2 grandpas in the same house.
If Jerry Springer is listening, I don't know if he pays for this kind of stuff, but I got a good story.
Oh man. So what did your parents do then? Because like from reading up on your background, you guys didn't have that much. So what did they do for work?
Well, my mother did not work outside of the house. After having kids of my own and being married, I know that you say didn't work outside of the house is the appropriate way to term it for all you men that are married and don't know how to do that. And my stepfather just went through a lot of jobs trying to find his niche. And so he just, unfortunately, always wasn't the best manager of money.
Gotcha. So did you not really like grow up? Did you not really see a lot of him? Was he working all the time?
Well, my father moved to Florida when I was 3. We had a very patchy relationship with that was hit or miss. And my stepfather was there, and he's a great man, just not the best with finances. Mm-hmm. And so I saw him. He was at home, but unfortunately, it just wasn't. I try to protect my family some, but it just wasn't the most enjoyable experience growing up.
For sure. So usually when there's many times when you see someone who's really successful like you, usually there was either a parent who was kind of mentoring them throughout this time or someone that they looked up to as a role model that kind of sparked an entrepreneurial drive or spirit. So who was that for you? Was it your parents or was it someone else?
It was my dad's brother, actually, in Florida.
Your dad's brother in Florida?
Yep, my uncle. Jules is his name.
What did he do?
Not Jewels, but Jules, Jules. He was insurance. He owned an insurance agency and is a self-made millionaire. And I really looked up to him because he had a massive drive to be successful. He had all the stuff that a young man would dream of, driving a Lexus, nice wife, and freedom is what I saw it as. Is he was able to come and go as he pleased, and I saw that, and I just knew very young that, man, I don't want to trade time for money. That freedom was cool, and I always remember him going into his office in the middle of the day, and I would be sitting out there doing something, and he'd say, I'm going to take a nap. And I mean, I don't know, I just look back on it. It was just so powerful that a man running this big company could kick his shoes off, lay on his leather couch, and take a nap in the middle of the day, running a big business. And all that just rang with me. And I'm like, man, how do I get to that? And he was really, really an amazing role model and an inspiration in my life.
And this is your stepdad's brother?
This is my father's brother.
Gotcha. But he was living in Florida, or would he?
Yes.
And he would just
and
travel.
My father was in Florida too. I would travel down. I got to see my dad a couple times a year, and growing up, and then I spent a lot of time with my uncle, which I very much enjoyed.
So was he the one that suggested that maybe you sell candy in school in 6th grade?
Not necessarily. I remember I saw other people that sold a little bit of candy in school, and I'm like, man, this could be a way. During my time, and I know it's still somewhat of a big deal, but it was a big deal to have all the new Jordans. It was like such a major status symbol that I wanted to fit in. I didn't want people to know that we didn't have as much money. And I remember we were eligible many times for free lunches. And back in the day, they made you stand in a separate line, and it's just not something I wanted to do. So I bought Jolly Ranchers for a penny and sold them for a dime. Hell of a return. You can't get that margin very much anymore.
Seriously?
Yeah.
How does that work? Like, so you're in 6th grade, you just go to like some random wholesale?
I went to Warehouse Club, which is now Sam's. I bought 1,000 Jolly Ranchers for $10. Sometimes they cheated me a few, and then I finally realized it had to do with the weight of the bag. But I bought $10 for 10,000, and I generally, between me eating them, giving them to pretty girls, 3 for a quarter on Fridays, I yielded somewhere just under $70 generally a bag, which was a hell of a return.
Seriously, in 6th grade? You're rich.
Yeah.
So we move on to high school. You're working 3 jobs. You're able to buy yourself a car. How was that the only thing that you were doing, working all the time, or did you have a side hustle outside of that? Because there's not too many high school kids even today that can afford to buy their own car.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I had saved up a lot of money selling candy. I actually put down $9,000 or $10,000 on the car when I bought it. It was a 1986 Trans Am back in 1989, and so it was pretty amazing. I made the payments on it, got my stepfather to co-sign the loan, and I paid it off very quickly. And I was working several jobs. At 1.3, where I was changing in my car, I missed 45 days of high school. They don't even allow that anymore. And I still graduated 6th out of 211, even though very few people on my mother's side of the family even made it through high school. Different era, whatever you want to call it. And I still graduated 6th out of 211, and I did miss 45 days a year.
Wow.
Which was a lot, obviously, like 1.5 days a week.
So were you always just naturally good at school? You had like, because obviously you have street smarts. I mean, you were able to, anyone that's going to sell candy at like a 7-1 margin definitely got street smarts, but did you always just naturally have book smarts? Were you always just naturally curious and just good at like school and learning?
I was good at retaining information. So candidly, like I could be this guy that would not turn in his homework, but I could ace an exam and cram for it the night before. It's not always the healthiest way to go about learning, but it got the job done. And at the time it served its purpose. So.
Gotcha. So you got that photographic memory. You can just like take some coffee the night before, read through everything, and pretty much have it like all good to go, just to just shoot it out the next day.
I've been dubbed Rain Man. In fact, Mark has been with me 12 years by my side, very good friend. He bought me a Rain Man poster and he imposed my head on it instead of Dustin Hoffman's.
Not bad. So we get past high school. Did you always know you wanted to go to OSU?
Well, I wasn't sure about college other than the fact that I felt, and I give my father credit for this, even though we don't have a relationship. My father, college was everything, and he pushed for it, and so I felt like I wanted to gain his respect. So I went to OSU. It was the most convenient thing for me to do, and especially where I could still live at home and keep the expense level low, or live it with my grandmother. So I went there hoping to gain my father's respect, which I'm sure I did. And I graduated in 1996 from OSU. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks. And this was your stepfather? Or your father that you...
My father.
Your father.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When he got divorced when I was 3, he moved to Florida. And again, we saw each other a couple times a year. And he pushed the grades, frankly, as much more than anybody in my life at that point. And that's why I went to college again, hoping to impress him. And took me the 5-year program, but...
Not bad. That has to be just a really strange scenario, I would think. I mean, personally, I grew up without a father. I don't know how I would be able to like kind of cope with the fact that my biological father's in Florida,
mm-hmm.
and he's up here every now and then. I have a stepfather who's uncle that I really want to be.
I'm sorry, the uncle is to my father too,
Uncle
and I apologize.
is to your father.
Yes.
Yeah,
so my uncle lived in Florida with my father.
Right.
And so when I would go down there the couple times a year, that's when I saw my uncle and spent time with him. My father had to work his job. It's almost an interesting scenario for those of you that know, like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, comparing the difference between home. But my father was working a job, and he did very well at it. He retired, and he's a self-made millionaire from working for the man or corporation, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I admired that my uncle had his freedom, and he was able to spend more time with me than the rest of my family when I was there, because he could just leave his job on a whim.
And so that's the curious thing. So at college, I'm assuming did you say like business or
marketing and finance? I did think I wanted to be a doctor, and then I quickly realized I'm in love with people, and I can't stand to see someone hurting. And so there was no way I would be able to ever deal with somebody in pain for a long period of time. And some of that stemmed from my childhood. With no disrespect to my mother, she has battled manic depression and bipolar her whole life. So it was hard for me. I'm not able to be around negativity or anything, because I had to deal with that, unfortunately, more than I would have liked.
Mm-hmm. So when you got out of college, did you know exactly what you wanted to be in life? Because you still have this dream of getting something, or at least the life of
like my
your
uncle, the entrepreneur.
But
I wasn't sure how I was going to get there. And in fact, my father worked for Ross Labs as well.
Okay.
He got me an interview there. I ended up getting the job, and my first job out of college was with Ross. Thank you to my father for that. And I moved to Cleveland, and I worked for a year. I was calling on 80 grocery stores up in the Cleveland area, trying to get more shelf spacing for Ross products, to give you the quick version of it. I quickly became one of the top reps, selling in caps of the products, everything in, which is more exposure for the company. But I can say this now because there's nothing they can do about it. But after I did that, I sold it in quickly. It became about a 15-hour-a-week job at most. So I was very bored, and I was searching for almost a second job. What else can I do? My wife had $20,000 in student loan debt, which was now mine as well. And We were living in an $800 apartment to try to be somewhere. We were at the Strongsville exit. The irony is the apartment now still costs the same. So unfortunately, I hit the peak. But we were still just getting by after taxes and everything by the time we paid the student loans and debts and car payments, and in the rat race, as Kiyosaki would say.
Right.
And I was searching for something else. And I almost was going to get my insurance license, thinking of my uncle and of my insurance agent. And then I heard guys were making $100,000 selling cell phones. And a light bulb went off. I was like, I don't care if I have to shovel shit to make $100,000 at the spot that I was in life. Mm-hmm. It was just too good to be true. I interviewed, it was actually Cellular One just getting ready to sell out to AirTouch at the time. So it was still Cellular One when I actually interviewed with them. They gave me the job immediately, very quickly in the Mansfield area, but I was extremely intimidated because I got offered the job too quickly, and I knew I would be leaving a Fortune 100 company, and I would be very ashamed. At that point, it was not a glamorous thing to tell people you were going to peddle phones on the street, because that's what it was. They were analog and bag phones back in '97. So at that point, they were just, you were selling them on the street to whoever would buy them.
So I'm picturing a like a table on the sidewalk.
Not that. I say on the street, meaning I would walk through the mall, go randomly in stores and say, hey, you want a cell phone, whatever, just whoever you could sell them to. And then you also would call on businesses and try to get them to buy for their employees or sell the employees' phones. It was very aggressive. It certainly taught me a lot of selling skills. The funny part, because I always like to interject comedy, my website is inspirehappiness.com as well. When he offered me the job in Mansfield and he sent me for the drug test, I really wanted the job in Columbus. I knew the market. I knew it was much larger than Mansfield, and I felt more comfortable. So I go for the drug test, and I don't know, those 5-gallon things of water that are on a machine that you get the cup under.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you when I tell you, and I don't even know how it's possible, where the water goes. I drank half of one of those, and I wasn't able to take a piss. And it was because I was that scared that I was going to leave a Fortune 100 company that my dad got me the interview in, and now I'm going to be a cell phone salesman on the street selling bag phones and analog phones. I, of course, passed the drug test. But then I was able to communicate to someone in Columbus, and I got the job down in Columbus. And this was in July of '97. The first 2 weeks I was on the road, I made almost $6,000. And I was like, holy shit, this is my way out. And the next 3.5 years, I was one of the top reps in the country, making $170,000 a year.
So how does that, so like just practically, what does a day in the life look like back then? Because you're anyone and everyone. So it's not like when I was coming up, you would have a Verizon store, you just walk in the store.
Yeah.
So this is you going in malls.
Yes.
Cold calling, door
That's
knocking.
all it was. I didn't work in a store. I beat the streets and sold hundreds of phones a month and beat everyone in the country doing it too.
Jeez, man.
Eye of the tiger.
Seriously.
Yeah. I apologize if I get choked up, but I don't put myself back in that spot too often.
No,
and
for
it's
sure.
an amazing thing to come through after what I've been through, and then to turn it into something. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. We do have tissues, by the way, if you
thank
need
you.
some.
I'm not afraid to show my emotions.
Hey, don't be. So how much, I'm actually just, I know I'm like sticking on this. I'm just really curious about it. So how much would you make per phone?
It was around $100 average.
And I'm assuming this is a little bit after the Michael Douglas Wall Street brick, right?
Yeah.
We're talking like
well,
maybe...
it wasn't that, but it was the smaller analog phone and the bag phone still in the car.
No way, dude.
How old are you?
29.
Yeah.
But I've watched a lot of movies.
46. So.
You don't look
Yes.
46.
Thank you. So, yes, it was the analog. The digital hadn't hit yet. So, yeah, it was incredible. But I created new ideas to be able to do it. I would go to someone, sell them a phone and say, hey, I'll give you a couple months free if you hold a party here, like almost like Quick Star, Amway, whatever you want to call it. I bought veggie trays and everything, and 10, 15 people would come in, and I'd get 60% of them to buy a phone. I actually got grocery stores and toy stores to let me set tables up. Worked crazy amount of hours to do it.
You actually did home events.
I mean, people started following what I was doing. I got anywhere I could get in front of an audience because I learned early on, sales is a numbers game. And if you contact enough people, you will sell the amount of product you need to sell, as long as you have a decent product.
Seriously?
Yes. And it paid off. And I saved up $250,000 working there, which was not easy to do as well. But we were able to buy the stock at a discount. And when nobody was buying it, and I begged them all to do it, I was borrowing from a credit card to put the maximum amount I could into the stock market, into the stock, because I knew like cell phones were going to be a thing of the future. And so in 2001, after making $14,000 a month, and of all irony, my family calling me Trump, which is ironic given today that he's president. But that's what they viewed it as, someone with all this. I'm driving a Lexus, bought a house, married. I had saved $250,000, and I walked in and quit my job. And I can tell you it was actually more scary than when I was a kid, not keeping houses, because I really wasn't looking to go back to anybody's basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. So you save up $250,000 because there was a point in time. So you see that cell phones are on the rise. You know they're going to be the future. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming when you say you bought stock, this was in
AirTouch.
AirTouch. That's
yes.
Right. So you knew that you were going to make a run for yourself, but what prompted you to do that? If life is good, 170 grand in the late 90s is a lot of money.
I didn't want to trade time for money.
Which you were still doing.
Yeah, and at the time, too, I actually happened to be on a trip. They gave us $10,000 trips for the top guys. And I was on a trip in Canada, and I was actually on a treadmill next to Denny Striegel, who was at the time the chief operating officer, I think. He had mentioned that the safer play was if you could go out on your own, something along those lines. And so I left shortly after that, within a few months. My wife had quit her job, and my son was like 8 months old.
Jesus.
And it was terrifying. And I had bought a new home. My wife quit her job. I quit my job too. My wife was really upset about it.
Was she not supportive?
She was like, what the hell? My dad said you were crazy. But life is about taking chances for those people out there that wonder. But you can't just take it blindly. You have to put yourself in, this is what my book is called that I'm writing, Position to be Lucky. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I obviously saved up enough money that I knew I could make it about 18 months.
So you knew 18 months was your stretch to make it happen. You know, I've always been curious, because there's a lot of men out there with wives that may have entrepreneurial dreams and ideas, but they think, I have a mortgage, a car payment, kids to take care of, and a wife, like I just can't do this. But you did. But ultimately, there's two major decision makers in that yes. process. It's, the spouse that wants to go out and start an entrepreneurial venture, and then they're obviously taking their spouse for the ride. So what does that conversation look like to get your wife to understand, like, hey, babe, I need to do this and it's going to be okay? Like,
I met my wife 26 years ago.
Wow.
And I needed one person to believe in me to the level that she did. And when she did, that's when I caught fire. I made $7 an hour. I worked at Kohl's. I lived in a house on the east side with two grandpas. And I needed to feel that love. And once I felt it, I was unstoppable. And she was behind me the whole way. She was scared, but she believed in me, and she still does.
So you weren't making all that much money. You were at Kohl's, just like
making $7 an hour. I was a shoe salesman.
And what was she? She come from like
She was working part time, going to school. She, she ended up working at banking like I did at Huntington Bank. She was a communications major. She did recruiting too for a while in her career.
How did you guys meet?
That's interesting in itself. My aunt happens to be 6 months younger than me. My grandmother was pregnant with my aunt when my mother was pregnant with me. And me and my aunt were pretty inseparable. That's the house I lived in. She lived there too, under my grandma's. It was her last child. She married my wife's brother. And that's how I met my wife. Their marriage, unfortunately, didn't last, but thank God that I met my wife that way.
Seriously?
Yeah.
What did you meet her at the wedding itself, or did you just meet her like kind of?
I had met her prior to them getting married. Actually, she had come into the store to see her brother. We worked at Herman Sporting Goods back in the day near Eastland Mall, and I had seen him there. And she's been amazing for me. It'll be a major part of my story.
You said she was the first person that believed in you?
I don't want to say the first person that believed in me, but the first person that I could feel just constant, I know you can do this better. Just, she felt like I could do anything.
Totally had your back, unconditional love, like a constant stream of it. It's amazing when you find that, right?
Yeah, it is.
Still looking for it, but that provides me some hope. So at the end of the day, she always had your back. You say, babe, I got to do this. She was nervous, but she was
nervous when I was charging groceries and saying, what the hell are you putting all our money into the stock? Yeah.
But she backs your play. You have 18 months. And then you move, when I was reading up on you, you were selling cell phones out of the basement when you started the first store, right?
Yeah. I bought two $50 Gorilla shelves at the Warehouse Club too, where I got the Jolly Ranchers. And I had the phones. They were on consignment back then.
So you were running this out of the place you bought those
She
Jolly
actually
Ranchers.
entered the door holding our son in a robe and handed phones to 4 independent contractors at the time.
Wow. And you did that for the first 6 months before you bought the first freestanding store?
Yes.
So freestanding store in Gahanna.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to go from one store to two?
A long time, a couple years.
Couple years.
Yes, because I had to realize the power. One of the top books I think of, if for an entrepreneur, is E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
It's a great book.
Fantastic. And I remember bawling when I read that, and I realized the power of and the difference of working in the business as a technician versus working on the business as a true entrepreneur.
Right.
And, and the hardest part for these people that have businesses, and, I coin it, you buy yourself a job.
Right.
It's okay to do that for a while. But after that, you have to find a way that your time's worth way more than the $12 or $15, $20 an hour work you're doing inside the business. And at the time I left, it was going to cost $35,000, $30,000 to pay someone good to take 20 hours of my work. I didn't want to pay that.
Right.
But then I quickly realized how effective I could be if I had all them free hours. So in a nutshell, I advise somebody to write down, what would you do if you had all them hours? I say it to anybody because I'm always mentoring business owners. I enjoy it. It is my passion to mentor business owners, young people. I love it. I like making a difference in people's lives. Hence why I bought the domain Inspire Happiness.
So what did you tell that person, like you tell everyone else, like what would you do with all those hours? You pay someone now $35,000 a year. What do you do?
Or less. What you do is you first figure out, okay, what is the layer of stuff I do and how much is it worth? And you just start doling off the cheapest labor rate and get somebody to do it. And it's powerful.
So when you first opened up that store, was it just you?
Yes, actually, me and another person running it. I was doing the bathrooms, the books, ordering the phones, doing all of it.
You're cleaning the bathrooms, you're handling the accounting.
Yes.
You're there at the front, at the register, helping people like sell. So you're doing the whole thing. Who was your first hire?
I had 4 people I brought in at a time that I met through friends. One of them was a friend, and a couple others. And I truly can't say that I remember exactly how I met them. Yeah, I surprised with my memory, but I'm also emotional today thinking back on it. It's not that often that I reflect to this deep level about it. So it's kind of interesting.
Because this would have, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't this have been your first hire? This would have been your first actual employee.
Well, and at that time they were 1099. I brought them on because I was smart enough to know, well, I can't bring someone on his payroll. I can't afford to do that until we sell something.
Right. I mean, that's the hardest thing. I mean, for people out there in the audience that haven't gone through that process, it's the hardest thing to decide. Okay, if I start, if I bring on a person, if I'm making X a month, and I start taking even just one person, it's just so hard to figure out. Even if this person is good, am I going to be good enough to direct them to be productive, to make the money back?
Yeah.
Which I think that's the critical juncture where most people just say, you know what, I'm just going to continue to do it myself.
I know, and what you have to do, and one of the things I always tell people is, I build a pie that's this big. And I don't want to, after all the hard work, you wouldn't expect me to reduce my pie to bring you on with no growth. If you help me grow my pie, I'll give you more than anyone else you're going to meet, and I will. And that's still how I run my business now.
So you would bring them in and you would train them on sales. Did you have scripts that you created and a whole training program?
Yes, I did, but I also I'm very free flowing, just as if some of the questions you had today, I didn't really look at, quite honestly, no disrespect, didn't have time.
No
it's
worries.
The last day of the month, and in a car business, the last day of the month is powerful.
Hey, I'm free flowing right now.
Yep. Yeah,
Team
I remember randomly picking up phone books and just even acting like I wasn't fully there and making calls until I got someone to come in and get a phone at the point where I was doing it. And that's no joke. So salespeople were like, Jesus, if he can just randomly keep hitting numbers. And it went back to sales as a numbers game. How many is it going to take you to get the lottery? And then those are worth money. You're going to have to get through so many. It's a fact. If anyone could just pick it up and every call was worth money, then we wouldn't be sitting here.
It's true.
And it was wild.
You did this in front of your staff.
Sales
hey
room,
guys,
boom.
You want to see
Watch
how it's
this,
done?
guys. And I actually act like I wasn't altogether there, the most polite way I can put it, on purpose to make it even more challenging. And yes.
Wow.
I was always like that. I did it when I worked at corporate. I actually just literally picked an exchange and went one number after another. Boom, 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 boom. Time to add a line until I got someone to say yes. Everyone else is running around like, how am I going to hit quota? I don't know. I hit quota in the first week.
Jeez. So we're talking 100 calls a day type deal?
More than that. And I took calls all the way up, my wife would tell you, till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Anyone that would talk to me at any hour. And it's hard to see that fight in people today. Man, do I get fired up thinking about it. You tell me I can't do something, I'll blow your fucking mind. And that's a fact.
I can feel it.
Yes, I can feel it too once I start thinking about it, because I think about all these people that just want to get all this money and not do it. You back me in a corner for my friend or family, you will shit what I'm capable of. Crying's over now.
Now we're on.
My favorite movie in my life is Cinderella Man. For those of you that have not watched it.
Great, man. With Russell Crowe.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
The boxer.
If you remember down there, and he could have gave up, but he saw his family laying there. I never was in that spot, but I still had enough rough moments. There's a lot of people counting on me, and there still is. And we'll get into some of the things I've done for him as we conclude through the story. But
yeah, for sure. So
I take that one store. It takes me a couple years. I read the E-Myth Revisited. I get to a second store and then a third store. And at that point, I feel like I got a good process. I read Good to Great by Jim Collins, and I realize get the best people you can, get them on your bus, even if you don't know where they're going to sit. And you'll find something for them. And I love it. If I've come across someone I like, I figure out anything I can get them to do, even if I got to lose money in the beginning, because it's hard to find quality people.
Yeah, it is.
I got one in Mark. He may not be on camera, but he's a great friend and been amazing. He was a personal assistant, personal trainer. He's wore a lot of hats.
And he was there for the whole process from 1 to 80?
Yes, he was, watching me cry about once a week. The stress I went under, he definitely will have to ad-lib in the book, because he was there watching it. And to watch another man actually once in a while, because Mark's a tough guy, get broken sometimes watching the pain I was in. It was a testament of true friendship and somebody that got to witness and say, this ain't what people think it is.
So the 80 stores, was that nationwide or was that in Ohio?
About 50 in Ohio, 6 in Michigan, and 30 in Florida, somewhere in that ballpark.
And you grew that from 2001 to, what was the year you hit
4
80?
years ago, we sold it. I think 15. Is that right, Mark? Is it 4 years this year? Yeah, it was one hell of a run. I was tested for leukemia for a year because the stress drove my white blood count below 1. And many times to blackout level, working around the clock to make that business work.
Really?
And people wonder why, I'm heavy into capitalism and entrepreneurs. It's unbelievable. I liken it to a football guy that only has so many years. It takes a lot out of you, and you make a lot of sacrifices. And as long as you're good to other people, you should be rewarded for that.
100%. So I'm just curious because, so you're obviously trying to get the time freedom, time for your family. You're trying to build that business system, everything that Kiyosaki talks about and the E-Myth talks about.
Even
building
when I worked
yourself
all
out.
them hours, I spent the time with my family too. They would tell you that. I may not have mentally always been there, and as the younger kids, they didn't exactly know that. But I did go to almost all their events and everything. I was there more than any father growing up.
Even growing like from 1 to 80, you still made the baseball games,
all
the
the
sporting
stuff that
outfits.
my kids have been involved in, I rarely missed. Even activities at school, all of it. My head wasn't always there, and I wish that would have been better, but I was physically there at least. And even with all that going on.
Seriously.
Yeah.
When you were actually building out the 80 stores, did you ever get to that point where you were truly felt that you were built out of the business?
Yes, I do. It's funny that you would bring that up. One thing I said for many years was if I got to a point in the company that I could not continue to lead it to growth and be the best leader I could be, it would be time to sell it. And I got burnt out at the end. And banks didn't really care for our business because if you're not familiar with how it works is I buy a phone for $1,000, I sell it for $400 or $600, and I wait for Verizon to pay me $600 and make $200. That's kind of how it worked. So meaning a bank says, wait a minute, you buy all this inventory you're responsible for, you sell it for a loss, and then wait up to 6-7 weeks for a pay to get money back. And they hated that. So my line of credit was always restricted and for growth.
Jeez.
And then managing 350 people, most of them in the mid-20s, it got a little bit exhausting. And it was very, very hard for me. And that's another part in itself, emotionally and everything, to sell the business. I cared so much for all those people. I gave them all vacation and sick pay and cash and negotiated that they got to keep it. And the hard part in life that I'll say is I only got a few of them that said thank you. They were angry that I sold it, but their perception is their reality. And so they probably thought, that I did it for selfish reasons. It wasn't the case.
You just had to get out.
Yeah.
Who did you end up selling it to? Was it
a company that had 400 stores?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and you sold that in 2015, and that's when you started Toy Barn a year later?
Yes.
Or is that...
I actually negotiated and learned with the old owner for about a year almost. It was about 9 months because I really got in the business in January. I didn't do what a mentor of mine said to do, and I regret that too for those of you that want to learn something. I should have taken a sabbatical, and I didn't. And I went crazy, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I don't have time to get into all of them today, but I will at some point in my life with my book and everything. But I didn't take the break that I really should have, because I had been running my whole life endlessly, even dreaming of being chased my whole life. And it was my time to relax a little. But I also wasn't used to it, and I was scared of what would happen if I didn't have something to think about. So I jumped in too quickly into another business, and I'm man enough to admit it. And it caused me not to be the leader I'm capable of to Toy Barn employees until more recently. So
what would you have done if you went on sabbatical?
I would have spent quality time with my family, of course. And I would have spent time trying to figure out myself at this point in my life and what I wanted next through somebody, that I could talk to, which I did in the last year better than I ever have, and it helped. I needed to do it prior, so I made some mistakes that, I wished I wouldn't have.
Mm. So where did poker get in the mix?
It's pretty wild.
Buddy, 2.2 million in poker? That's
Yeah.
not it's not easy by any stretch. Like, where did that come from? Did you just watch ESPN2 one day?
Actually,
and was like, hey.
I played a couple small times, and I was always watching it on TV. And in 2008 is actually really when I got into it. Prior to that, I had played a few times, but my son and I were watching it, and at that point, he was 7, 8 years old. And he says, "Dad, how could you ever expect to win one of these things? You have a job." That's what he called my business. And I don't know. I never got to compete in any sports growing up.
Really?
All I ever did was make money to take care of people around me.
You're pretty built guy. That's
Never
that's pretty
competed.
surprising. No football, no wrestling.
Mark started that.
that.
So my son said that, and I don't know. It quite honestly pissed me off. And I went from there, and I did well. I won over the first 4 years. I won almost $1 million, maybe.
Was this in Vegas?
I was all over the country. I even left out of the country a few times to play and did okay. But then I got in 2012, my son and I were in an ATV accident. A 900-pound ATV came on top of both of us. And I was able to, your adrenaline gets going. It crushed me down, but saved my son's life. It would have, I don't know what it would have done. Can't even get my head there. And it was on Easter Sunday. And it crushed me down. It broke my collarbone and several ribs. And I spent the night in the hospital on that Easter. I didn't get to eat my Cornish hen. But I laid in bed, and this is interesting. I watched Cinderella Man, and I watched 2 weeks of poker on TV. And I took my son's soccer figurine, and I went and I won a world title with a broken collarbone and in a lot of pain. And it was pretty wild. I cried for like 2 hours.
After you won?
I'm the woman in the relationship, for those of you that are wondering. With me and my wife, she would admit it. But I beat out 300 and some guys. It was really, really amazing point in my life.
How soon were you out of the hospital to when you entered that tournament?
I was 3 weeks later or something after laying in bed. It was the first time I had experienced real depression because I was always hustling and my kids were just walking by me laying there in that bed with my collarbone like that. I didn't end up getting the fusion. I just let it grow back that way because they said given that it barely overlapped, I could do that. And I didn't want to cut through the muscle and all that.
Yeah, no.
But it was hard for me, very hard. Which hence is why I probably didn't take the sabbatical. But I went there with a lot of passion, and it's still incredible to think about.
Did you ever play poker, like even growing up in high school or college?
Nothing.
So did you read any like the books on strategy?
I did read a few of the books. I watched it on TV is where I got most of it. And then I'm always a guy that unfortunately jumps in with both feet instead of slowly, which costs me a lot of mistakes too. So I just bought right into $10,000 tournaments and lost and learned that way. Wow. You call that tuition. And yeah. And then I ended up beating just about anybody you could name on TV. I mean, I beat out
Chris
lot of great
Moneymaker?
players. Yeah, I played tons of times with him.
Phil Ivey?
I played a few times with him, not as much.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, played with Doyle Brunson, and
what about Jesus?
I played with him a couple times too.
Or is it Jesus or Jesus? Like the guy with like the hat and like the
yep.
you know,
long leather coat, looking like there's two shotguns in it.
That's
Yeah.
that's right.
I played with all of them.
Man, that's
and
Dan Blazarian.
I hadn't played with him yet. I know of him, but he plays big cash games more than tournaments, though. I don't even know if he plays in tournaments.
Gotcha. Was this all Hold'em?
Yeah, it was no limit Hold'em, and it
No
was all
limit
like
Hold'em.
$5,000 and $10,000 buy-ins.
Jeez. What was your best, bring me back to your best takedown where you took such pride in, whether it was like a bluff.
There's two.
Bring me back to that. I love poker, dude.
Well, the one winning that world title is the takedown in itself meant everything. It was something I finally won at, other than trying to just make money and take care of people. But I also like had a lot of fun toying with it, and I still fearlessly went at it. I even at the end of that one, which most people don't know, they misdealt the hand and they dealt me pocket threes, and the guy moved all in, and I have him 10-1 in chip count. So a pair heads up is golden, you call. But I know that he's got two overs, obviously. If I have threes, it's unlike he's not calling with twos. The odds are next to none. So I folded that and showed everyone, laughing, whatever, like saying, I don't want it to be over yet. And then the very next hand, I get pocket threes, but I get to go in first. So I shove, he calls, and I win. So that experience was great. And then the whole fact that, again, no one would fold a pair heads up. I just really kind of made a joke of it. I was in that type of mood.
Yeah. Do you remember the flop?
Oh, no.
It's too long ago, right?
Yeah, maybe if I win
minute.
again. I don't play that much now. But
You don't play that much now?
no, a couple times a year now.
Were you the guy that counts cards, or are you just like natural
No,
at reading people?
I can strip someone down to their underwear quite quickly. And I can get somebody to tell me everything that they don't want to tell me. It's a pretty amazing gift.
Did you always have that growing up?
A long time, but most of that I've come to realize is because I'm pretty authentic myself and genuine. So people feel very safe, and I'm not out to harm anybody. So they feel very safe to have a discussion with me with anything.
That's a good point.
And so in the poker, basically, I'm sniffing around to see who gives a shit about the money. And once I smell you care about the money, I'm out for blood. I'm a loving guy, but not at that table. I'm not.
Did you ever beat any of these big names?
Not
Got 'em on a great
necessarily
bluff?
heads up, but no. I mean, I beat several. I beat Doyle Brunson out of a major hand in a tournament before at Bellagio, which was really cool. But yeah.
Is it like the money that you make from poker? Because at this point, you're running a successful business. You're doing all this good stuff. Is it the money that you make from poker, or is it just the feeling that I took you down?
There were times it was for the money. And, again, I only have so much time today, but
For sure.
there were times that the poker money came at a time to help make payroll in the wireless business. Not too many people know that.
Really?
So you get some tidbits here. You better send someone to buy a car.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there were times for that, but most of it then became, especially after selling the business, more for fun.
Gotcha.
But if you lose that eye of the tiger, and after selling the business and doing it more for fun, I didn't have the edge as much to win. So it's interesting, because if you can go back and you keep that hunger and fight, which is hard to do, you can always continue to do well.
Right.
But it's hard to have that all the time.
Absolutely. So let's fast forward to Toy Barn. So Toy Barn, why don't you explain for the audience what makes Toy Barn unique?
When I bought Toy Barn, it was known for selling basically high-end vehicles that few can afford. I quickly realized, first off, not having any car business knowledge at all other than what I liked and was able to buy myself for years. The business is full of people that have done it 30 years and full of kids that come from fathers that owned it and everything. There's very few guys that do it and just on a whim and buy it as big as I did. But I told you I jump in with 2 feet. So I bought up way more than I should have. The land, though, is great land in Dublin, and I'm sure that'll pay off. Learning the business cost me millions of dollars. Yes.
Really?
I'm never afraid to share my soul with people. It did. I had to learn the business. I didn't know it, and rather than just go and sit in classrooms everywhere, I'm just the type, okay, I'll lose some money and figure it the hell out.
So what was the initial urge just to buy a car dealership? Do you just like cars that much?
I love cars. I love people. And all my car buying experiences, except one dealer, pretty much, they screwed me. And it's a dirty, dirty business, to the point that it broke me down in the beginning for a while. Not everyone, that's not fair, but 90% of the business is crooks. I don't care who hears it. It's just bad. Everyone's trying to fuck each other. Jesus. And I knew that if I was an honest guy with my type of drive, that I could do well with it. I quickly realized that not enough people could afford cars that are in that 100,000 plus range. And I quickly learned that I needed to carry other models. And over the last year and a half, that's what we've done. And that's why we have returned to nice profitability and growth. We're having our largest month this month. We will retail and wholesale combine 150 cars this month, which is quite a bit. I didn't know that till I called around and realized that, that's more than a lot of guys around here in town do. And I don't have any new car franchise. They're all pre-owned. What separates the Toy Barn from other dealerships is the experience. When you go in there, you're treated like royalty, even if you're looking at a $10,000 car. Everyone knows they have to do it that way, and if I find they don't do that, there'll be a problem. I love people to a crazy level of fault. And so all my cars are unlocked in the showrooms. We're talking $250,000, $300,000 cars. You will not find that at anywhere in the country. Many kids travel hours to be inspired by me in the dealership, and I get my energy source from that. I like knowing that I can light somebody up. And I think the Toy Barn has capability to do so much more. It's a medium for me to be able to communicate to young people, mentor them, and I really like that. And I'll touch on that in another second. But back to your question too about making it special. We also carry 200 cars from $8,000 to $300,000. You won't find that type of variety at too many spots. We carry 30 plus Mercedes, Audi, BMW, late model cars, but we also carry, again, anything. Toyotas, Hondas, all of it. Not have as much as that stuff, but we basically get trade-ins all the time, and we keep them as long as they meet our specifications. And it's very cool. And I'm proud to say when I'm there, and I'm just as happy when a guy is lit up buying his $10,000 car. It means a lot to me that he trusts me. And I back all that. No one's ever going to have a problem doing business with me unless they're out to do something crooked themselves. Because I can assure you, before I would hurt somebody, I would lose everything I have. I'm not that guy. But we live in a world, unfortunately, where the honest and the people that do it that way, it's a struggle. Because if you're up against 9 out of 10 that do things a little bit differently, it's very difficult. And some of the things I mean by that is we service our cars up very highly when we put them out for sale. We're known for putting brakes and tires on our cars months before other dealers do it. These are things people don't understand. They think they're just buying the same car. But the Toy Barn's cars are unique. 90% of them are lower miles, more options than anybody out there. And all this can be looked up, so it's not like I can sit here and make it up. I'm proud to say our cars come up very competitively for what they are. And I love what I do. I'm passionate about people and cars. And I think the Toy Barn can be so much bigger. And a lot of that is because I don't wake up thinking about how much money I'm going to get out of it. I wake up thinking about how can I continue to give back, mentor people, and make this something so powerful in the city of Columbus. And it's exciting. I know that there's a huge future for it.
100%. 100%. That's awesome. So tell me about Team Focus. I was loving that when I read about that. I never heard of the organization before. I was like preparing for this interview. So it's an organization that helps kids who are growing up without father figures.
Yes.
So what do you do in that organization to kind of help with that cause? Like, can you tell me a bit more about that?
I sit on the board there, help them make decisions, help them raise the funds to continue to run the program. There's chapters all over the country. I help bring in people to the banquet, set up silent auctions for houses that go for 10 grand a week and raise money that way, where we negotiate and then raise money. I give a reasonable amount of money to the organization every year. I'm one of the top donors, if not number one. It's also cool. We get to, Urban Meyer came several times and pretty much committed to showing up regularly there at the banquet annually that we run. And it's cool. 600 people come. I have personally mentored the young kids outside of the organization through social media. One of them that stood out from the pack, I let come to my house several occasions and spoiled him a little bit. It's cool. My dream to be successful is to give back. I don't want to be the richest guy in the world. I want to know that if you spend some time with me, about 10 minutes or more, you never forget who I am. And I know there's a bigger calling for me than Toy Barn. But Toy Barn is an incredible medium for me to give back and reach all the people that want to be reached.
So what is that bigger calling?
I know that I can stand in front of thousands of people, light them up, mentor business owners. I dream of doing that. It's important to me that I can give back because it somehow gives me back part of the life that I've traded to be where I am today. I don't know why, but it makes me remember why I do everything that I do. And then people say, how do you get out of bed every day? When you got people raw, I just got knocked off on a bad wire where people ripped me off for $520,000. And we'll see the FBI's involved. And how do you get out of bed every day? You know why? There's people counting on me. And I know I have to remind myself why I'm here. It's a short amount of time for all of us. And I want to keep making a difference in people's lives. And I want to be a great role model to my family and to the people around me.
And is that why?
And I know that if more people understand that about me, and candidly, we're looking into PR, this type of stuff is nice. I know people would be very honored and happy to come to my place and give me a chance to help them with their vehicle. Then in turn allows me to continue to run a great business and give back in Columbus and mentor lots of young people who I'm sure there's many that come in there, and I talk to everyone I can, by the way. Their parents probably don't even know half of them that I'm doing that. I want the world to know that. It's okay now for me to let them know, help me, and I promise I'm not looking to just sit back and get rich. I want to just do for people.
So, and is that why you wanted to write the book?
Yeah, I want that book. I could care less about how much money I make off that too.
What's
I
the
want
book?
that book. It's called Position to Be Lucky. And I'm interviewing ghostwriters to help because I'm too slow with the writing. But
is this going to be an autobiography or really a biography then, I guess?
We're working on that part of how it goes. I want it to be helping to people. So, a self-help book kind of, but also so people can see a lot of guys like me aren't willing to be as authentic and tell about all the nightmares and bad things that go with life. And I will be willing to do that. My wife has agreed to that I can be very transparent like I always am. And I know once I do that, there'll be people that I can help.
When you look back throughout your life, because there seems to be, you obviously have gotten a lot of success, but you said there's a trade-off. What was the trade-off?
There is a major trade-off. Even though, again, I was there, I was at my house, I'm going to my kids', the amount of stress, who knows? I told you my blood count went down. I don't know what that does to someone over time. And then I also didn't have nearly the amount of time for myself, which unfortunately I had to wait until this last year to really work on myself. Never had time, meaning go speak to somebody and get through some of the pains of my past so I could move forward at 46 years old. And I'm proud to be able to say I can do that. And I also am very transparent of saying I battled some heavy depression after selling that Verizon business. Most people don't like talking about that too, but I went through a ton of pain, and I was able to come out of that with the help of family and friends.
Do you think that's because if you build a business, like it's your baby, you build it from 1 to 80, that it almost becomes like a part of you? That when
It
you
did.
sell it, it's like you lost like almost like
It
your
was
identity.
it was that I was known as the Verizon guy. And I know that them younger people, as they get older, I know several now reach back out and realize how they had it with me. I made it always like a family feel, even 300 and some people deep. At the end, though, I got too burnt out to do it. I'm human. And it's hard to explain that to them. But I still would go back and hope they could listen and have some empathy and understand after all that I had been through in life, it was time for me to take a little bit of a breather and do something else.
So what does the next 5 years look like for you? What are the future plans and goals and dreams? Because, I mean, buddy, you've done so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You really have. I mean, it's been a wild. I'm reading your bio. I'm reading about your history. I'm just like, why haven't they made a movie about this? It's possible.
Yeah, it is.
So what is the next, like, after having like accomplished so much, done so much, experienced so much, both good and bad, what are the next steps? What do you want to, what are you next planning on or working on?
I would like to get Toy Barn to a spot to have longevity, build up enough clientele and respect that it stands for something. But I don't need to be the biggest. I won't be, actually. I've already that's not something I'm striving for. In Verizon, I did strive. I was in the top 6 in the country for size of agency and one of the most profitable per door, if not number one. But not everyone wants to admit what that number is. But with Toy Barn, I just want it to be some great place that's known for, there's nothing like this to go in and experience the way this feels to buy a car. And I am proud to say almost everyone says that comes there. So if they give me a chance, I can get any car, and I want to build that into something. But I do promise to do very good with the growth of the business and give back to the community, young people, business owners. Once Toy Barn is more sustained, and I can say that it's e-mythed, that's what I call it. Because right now I am bought myself a job temporarily. And I'm man enough to admit it. I'm working in the business hard because I want to understand all of it before I dole out the responsibilities. And once it sustains itself, then I want to continue to look at, I know I would be extremely effective at a nonprofit organization. I know if I would have took my sabbatical, I can't say I would have bought Toy Barn even. I might have actually taken my money and built something more on the nonprofit side. I didn't realize you could build something like that, but then also get paid for your time, because I'm not able to maintain the people that I take care of, which, by the way, I bought most of my family houses and cars. We'll skim over that, but yes, very few people do that, even very wealthy people.
Bought him a house and a car.
House and cars for many. So I want the business to sustain where I'm at. I really only dream on a material side of things. I get to drive the cars, and I love cars. I really would like to have a nice place someday, like maybe in North Carolina for a second home. But other than that, I want to leave my legacy. I want to be remembered as a guy that gave his heart and worked very hard to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. There's tons of people out there that have crazy power and they don't even realize it. They just need the right guy to unleash that seed. And I know I'm capable of it. I've seen it happen.
Your ability to like bring the best out in people?
Yes, but also people need someone to believe in them. So the people that don't, just to let them know how powerful it can be. And you have to tell yourself why you're doing it. All of us have to eat food, pay rent. There's something more. What is it you want out of your life? And it can't just be about materials, because we all need some level of that. That's fine. And it is in the beginning in Maslow's hierarchy.
Right.
But if you really look at the end, in mine, it was my family. I wanted to create a different family life than what I watched. And I didn't do a perfect job at it, but I did a reasonably good job.
And that was the point of self-actualization, creating
Yeah.
a different family life.
Yep. And being somebody that people walk away and say, damn. And I can truly say, in the most humility that I can, many people say that about me. They tell me I'm infectious, and I run into people that say, you made a difference in my life.
It's an amazing story, man. You got to let me know when that book comes out.
Yeah.
You got to let me know when that book comes out. So kind of like wrapping this up, in closing, before we get into the lightning round questions, if you, maybe a little teaser for what the book's going to get into, if you had a piece of advice to the next generation coming up who want to be like you, who want the success and everything, like if you could just tell them something about like, hey, it's not just about the money, or maybe it is about the money. If you just wanted to like reach out and say, hey, here's a piece of advice, what would it be?
It's simple. When you're young, and it's just something I don't see that often, and I like telling it to people. Everything I did, even from working at a grocery store to working for $7 an hour at Kohl's, I made myself, even though it wasn't commission jobs, grocery store bag or any, I went way overboard. I did way more than it was asked of me. And you know why? And I can say it as I'm older. At the time when I'm doing it, I just always wanted to please everyone and be the best. But what I realize is, if you don't get in the habit of doing that when you're younger, a light bulb don't just come on and you just say, okay, I'll give 110% when I stop working at McDonald's. It don't work that way. You have to shape your life early by giving everything you got to everything you do. And you get programmed into being that type of person. And that is actually what most people are missing. And then you have to figure out what your why is. And Simon Sinek taught me that. You have to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. And like I said too, it's not enough to just say, well, I got to eat and put house over my head. You have to figure out why it is you want, what you want in the future, and why you're doing what you're doing. And that's a challenge for some people, especially when you're young. But you just kind of think about it and figure out where you want to be. You look at the people around you that struggled and you say, these are the things I can do differently. And so life is about pay now or pay later. And we watch a lot of the generation baby boomers working at a very old age. You know, they didn't make some of the right choices when they were younger. And the power of compounding interest that school doesn't teach them. And knowing how often your money's turning over. And if you start saving at a young age, pay yourself first. I did. I used a credit card to buy groceries to save $250,000. I didn't just start a company and do that. I did it for the 4 years working at corporate. I always put myself in a position to be lucky, which is the title of my book. Learn from those around you. Spend time with them. Be respectful and be around the right group of people. Don't waste time with people that aren't helping you grow. And then don't be in front of the video games all the time. Life is about balance. And that's probably the top thing I can say. You deserve to play hard, but you have to work hard first. And so balance it out. Do your job when you're there and do it to the best of your ability. And then when you're away from it, enjoy your life.
Well said. So lightning round are the fun, short questions, quick answers, first thing that comes to mind type deal.
Mm-hmm.
So favorite restaurant in Columbus?
Ocean Club.
Nice. Mine too. Favorite bar in Columbus?
I don't really go to them, but I'd say Smith and Lewinsky's because I like that you can see outside.
For sure. It's great in the summertime too.
Yes.
Favorite park to take the family in Columbus?
Well, I won't lie to you. My kids are a little older now, so I haven't been to a park in a while. So.
Hey, that's fair.
Now, we are taking a staycation this weekend, starting on Friday. And I did pick on there that we could go on a bike ride and I would have a picnic lunch for everybody.
There you go. Buckeyes or Blue Jackets?
Buckeyes.
There you go.
But I like both. I happen to live across the street from Unberger and I don't want him to come take a shit on my lawn.
For sure.
Sorry.
That's awesome. COSI or Columbus Museum of Art?
COSI.
Favorite movie?
Cinderella Man.
Favorite business book?
E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And Good to Great by Jim Collins.
I haven't read that one yet.
And one more. It's not business, but it is a must-read right up there with the Bible. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I'm reading it again massively powerful because people don't know how to communicate, including to their spouse, kids. This book is powerful. If you do anything and you look at somebody that's come from nothing to be where I am, the top thing I can say immediately is read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I'm rereading it as we speak.
Yeah, my mentor in Toronto, he's like a second father to me, constantly talks about that. Gotta win. He's like a big Irish guy. Gotta read, win friends, and influence people. Dale Carnegie, take the course. He's got like this deep Irish voice. I can't even do it because his voice is so deep.
Probably from the Irish whiskey.
Probably. Gotta have that JMO.
Yep.
And the last question, if you don't have much going on a Saturday afternoon in Columbus, what would you do for fun?
Swim with my kids, ride bikes with them, or play dominoes. Mexican dominoes we've enjoyed a lot as a family. It's different than regular dominoes. So
I was about to say, I've never played
very,
Mexican
very cool.
dominoes.
Mexican dominoes, look it up.
Add it to the list, Owen. All right, man. Well, Shawn Cunix, thanks so much for coming on, man. Honestly, this was a blast.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all your all the candidness and vulnerability and just being real. I mean, this has been great. And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll see you.